This is a situation that requires tact and finesse. Fortunately, I am blessed with both. Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about episodes 9 to 12 of the Trial to the Time Lord storyline. This segment is called Terror of the Vervoids, written by Jane and Pip Baker, with the trial segments being written by Eric Saward, and is directed by Chris Clout. And this story had a lot of struggles to get past. With the last two segments, John Nathan Turner and Eric Saward knew which writers they wanted, or at least they had like a good idea what each story had in mind. They wanted one segment for the past, one segment for considerably the present, just before the trial segments, and now this would be the future segment. And right off the bat we have an issue, because for this to work, the Doctor has to, actually I'll tell you that when we talk about the plot. But yeah, and we know at least 3 other scripts that were originally supposed to take this spot of the future segment to the Trial of the Time Lord. One of them being, I believe it's called Paradise 5, which Big Finish has adapted into audio form. One of them is called, I believe it's The Vampire of the Mind, or The Evil of the Mind, or something of the Mind. And one story was originally entitled The Last Adventure, which would also be the title of the box set in which Big Finish lead up to the 6th Doctor's regeneration. Now, another thing to note in terms of canonicity, which is really frustrating for me, is that this story is actually set a lot further down in the Doctor's time stream, because it's here where we see him travelling with Mel, or Melody Bush, here played by Bonnie Lanford. And I was considering talking about this much later when we get to Bonnie Lanford's era, shall we say, when we talk about like the audio dramas around that era and stuff. But I decided to keep it where it is in the television because of 2 main factors. One, the trial segments are still set in modern 6th Doctor era, and 2, a lot of the footage, part of the plot of the trial segments is that the Doctor has discovered that there's some sort of tampering as footage has changed from when he last seen it to when he saw it now. So for all we know, all this footage could be falsified. And so I've decided to, and plus the overall storyline of Trial of the Time Lord doesn't really work without this, which introduces Mel in a way. But anyway, in terms of the actual plot, however, Terror of the Vervoids is the least connected out of all of them. Despite we have the trial segments, the actual story itself has nothing to do or revolve around the trial itself. There's no mystery, there's no building up. And I did have an issue with the first story, Mysterious Planet, in that it did a lot of this, ooh, what is this? This information will be important for you later, we'll just keep that hidden from you until we're ready to reveal it. But this story doesn't do that, which I would have been absolutely grateful for. And if this was a great story, it would have been praised by me. However, it's not very good. It's easily one of the weakest of the 6th Doctor era, which is really a shame because it actually does remedy some of the issues that a lot of people had with the 6th Doctor. Maybe it's because he's got a new companion, or that the main segment is set way later in the 6th Doctor's time stream. But anyway, I digress. So the story starts off right off the bat with a massive problem, which I don't think could really be helped because the way these stories are set up, the first two is the Valeyard's testimony against the Doctor. And so the Doctor needs a testimony for himself, and they wanted the third segment to be from the future. So what they have to do is the Time Lords let the Doctor into the Matrix, where he sees his own personal future and takes evidence and uses that as evidence. So they're basically watching the Sixth Doctor in the future. These are events that have not happened yet for the Sixth Doctor. So none of this makes any sense. And what's really frustrating is that the actual story, Terror of the Vervoids, is a Agatha Christie-style mystery murder. For those of you who don't know, Agatha Christie was a famous writer, and she had a very unique style in which she would have a handful of characters in a very tight space, whether it be a train or a hotel or whatever, and basically everybody is a suspect, and slowly, one by one, when characters get murdered and more plot and more clues have been revealed, do we work out who the villain, who the murderer is. But if the Doctor is watching this in the past, watching his future self in the past, then the Doctor should already know all this. The Doctor should have really stepped in. It's like, Mel, we're on what's it called? Hyperon 3, the ship. I know who murdered everybody. Come on, let's go. So that begs a lot of questions. Did the Doctor get amnesia by the time Terror of the Vervoids happened? Did the Time Lords wipe his memory? Or was it because he's seen all this that he knows he can't change time, and so he has to act according to what he remembers on the screen? I don't know, it doesn't make a lick of sense, and it just baffles me. This is not a criticism on Jane and Pip Baker's writing, mind you. This was a problem that was clear to anybody. Is from Eric Saywood and John Nathan-Turner setting up this Trial of the Time Lord in the way they did. They wanted this to not only be the Doctor's segment, the Doctor's evidence for his good behaviour, but they also wanted this story to set in the Doctor's personal future, so that's baffling. However, I do like the idea of what they were going for. As we've had in the first two stories, the Doctor being brash, arrogant, as a Sixth Doctor, though he's a lot more calmer than he is in from season 22. He's a lot more calmer, but he still has his bursts of outbursts, especially when he doesn't get his own way and when he feels like he's being unjustifiably accused. And so, in the last story, we had Perry get executed because of his own arrogance, because he put his companions in this situation in which the harm could easily come to them, and he treats it as a sort of game. And so, the Sixth Doctor uses this trial segment to show he can be a better person. This is part of the segment where he shows, or he's supposed to reveal anyway, that he might not be a good man yet, but he can be. He will change. It's all about redemption in a way. And so, yeah, again with Mysterious Planet, I think it's a lot better, I should say. I think with Mysterious Planet, the trial segments and the story elements are much better in the mindset of being two separate entities. In fact, people who organised the 2019 Blu-ray edition of the Trial of the Time Lord seems to think this, because when they released that, there's a special feature where you can watch a edited version of this without the trial segment, so it stands alone as its own 4-part adventure. So in terms of the trial, the Doctor, like I said, uses this to gain evidence on himself, and I do like the idea that the Doctor's trying to show that that he can redeem himself, that he can improve, he can be better, but the trial is really against him. And we also learned that there are some evidence that's been changed, it's been manipulated. In one case, the Doctor in the Terror of the Vervoids dismisses one of Mel's observations and tells her to basically go look at it herself while he muppers around in the gym. And the Doctor in the trial now is like, wait a minute, that's not how I remember it. When I first watched this, I went to investigate with her. I did not put her life on the line. What is going on? And then again later on, the Doctor in the Terror of the Vervoids seemingly for no reason smashes the communication deck. And again, the Doctor has this outburst. And now the thing to note is that the Time Lords have their security is the Matrix, which has all Time Lord knowledge. And according to most, if not all, of their leaders, their higher ups, this Matrix is unfathomable. It is something where it's always right, it's never wrong. However, the Doctor, as we learn, he sees that these evidence have been altered to go against him. Somebody wants the Doctor's head, and they are determined. And so the Time Lords believe that the Matrix is the truth, and the Doctor, knowing that something has gone wrong, that the footage is being distorted, is basically set up where he has to use a system he knows is in the wrong. He knows that this that there is an error in this sense of judgment because the footage he's showing has been altered. But he has to use this as evidence, otherwise he basically gives up and lets the Valeyard win. So that's a very good dynamic. However, I don't think it really works in terms of the pacing of the adventure. Majority of times it seems like we go cut into the story for a long period of time, and then maybe once or twice we cut to the trial where the Doctor's like, that didn't happen, and everybody's like, now are you claiming that the Matrix is lying? Maybe, I don't know. And the Inquisitor's like, I'm tired of this. Can we just go back to watching the episode? You're quite right, ma'am. And presses the thing, and they watch the episode again. So in terms of pacing, this trial segment really hinders on the main plot. But how is the main plot itself? The story starts off with the Doctor, the Sixth Doctor, and Mel, a companion from the Doctor's future, who we never get to see her introduction story. We know that she first appeared in the Sixth Doctor era in terms of the television because this is her future and blah-de-blah-de-blah. But we never see her get introduced, and the next season, sadly, Colin Baker would be fired and we would never get an explanation as to how Mel got introduced to the TARDIS. Now, Mel is played by Bonnie Landford, who's mainly known for her pantomime work and working on, I believe it's EastEnders and Blue Peter. And she is a very controversial character in terms of the fan base, because a lot of people don't like Mel. They find her annoying, irritating. It seems like she starts screaming everywhere. The gag that she is basically looking after the Doctor's weight. The first scene we see of them is they're exercising in the TARDIS, and the Doctor really just couldn't care less, but Mel's pushing him to do these repeated exercises. The guy gets really old. Now, I don't want to take anything away from Bonnie Langford. I think she's a fantastic actress, and I've seen her in a few other things, and she does a fantastic job. However, in Doctor Who, Mel, I just really couldn't stand her. Now, here's an important thing to note with my viewing point of Mel whilst I'm watching this story. Since I'm watching this story, the only stories that I've watched of Mel's, including like before the marathon, is the television adventures. I have not listened to yet any audio dramas that feature Mel, and a lot of people consider Mel to be one of the characters that Big Finish saved. And so, what happens to if Mel's a great character or not moving forward, I simply don't know, because there's a lot of elements that are out of my reach for the moment. But I know for a fact that her television stories, I really don't like this character. She, in a way, she's kind of a breath of fresh air, with a few companions who really don't want to be part of the adventure. They like to travel, but when it comes to the monsters and the dangers, they basically are unequipped, and they basically the story treats them as if like they're just going for traveling. It just so happens that they're monsters. But Melody and the Doctor, Mel likes to go into the adventure as well herself, and that does bring out a unique trait. And that's why when people say that they like Mel, I can see their point of view. I do understand that there is an appeal to Mel. However, I just can't get over the silly wackiness of her character. That I don't want to take a thing away from Colin Baker and Bonnie Langford and pantomime, but this story, especially with its script, Pip and Jane Baker really love their like silly pantomime moments, and it really doesn't work. And this story, they kind of emphasize it. There's a lot of scenes in which Mel is just in the gym, and she learns all of this strange information, which just seems to be like a good coincidence that she just happens to be here in the room where she needs to be. And the Sixth Doctor here in the trial segment is a lot more nicer, a lot more calmer than he is ever been. In fact, you might even say that he's cured from his bombastic self. Yes, he still has outbursts, but they're more like regular outbursts, and he does seem generally to care for Mel, as she basically leads up her own investigations, and the Doctor tells her to be careful and tells her to watch out. And also when he's dealing with newer characters, he tries to use his charm and his wit. One of my favourite scenes is actually when he's trying to bribe the woman behind the counter so that he can look at the records to see if he recognises anybody. And he brings out some flowers. Again, it adds to that really silly pantomime-y storytelling, but it does show a nicer side to Colin Baker and shows that he can play a more traditional, action-packed, focused Doctor rather than the bombastic melodrama Doctor that we've been accustomed to at this point. So what is the actual plot? Because we've done all this talking about, we haven't actually delved into the plot. I don't want to talk about it too much because I must be honest, I'm not the particular fan of this story. I like Agatha Christie's stuff, and I do applaud Pip and Jane Baker on attempting to do a Agatha Christie story. However, it feels like we do have a good mystery on what's going on and who's the murderer. As we have a group of characters, and we have these weird aliens with these suits that translate them. We have this old guy who just seems to recognize people who he shouldn't have really met. We have one of the stewardesses. We have the captain that's known the Doctor. Actually, he's a Commodore now. We have his not secretary, his defense man, his right-hand man. And we have 3 scientists that are working on these plant life forms, these plant pods. And the cliffhanger for part 1 is that Mel's investigating these pods, and one of the characters, who's a red shirt, he's not really like a named character or anything. He goes into the thing to show Mel about these pods, and he's like, we don't want you to break your neck, not until, and he touches the bar wires, and he zaps, and and dies. I really want to know, when did he want to break Mel's neck? That's a big mystery. I think we need to know. Was he a part of the killers? Was he the murderer? Who knows? Never know. And important thing to note in terms of Bonnie Lanford's casting, in terms of the cliffhanger. One of the reasons she was cast is because her scream was the right pitch, the same pitch as the Doctor Who outro. So when she starts screaming, it melds well with the outro. That was actually one of the big factors on her casting, which I think was a very poor decision to try and cast someone. I thought I was going to lead into something more important than that. And so we get a bunch of deaths as we learn that this character has died, and he left a shoe, these two shoes, one in the furnace and one in his room, believing to be his character. The Doctor doesn't know. I forgot to mention the Doctor and Mel are there because they had a Mayday call. However, they can't figure out who sent it. Originally, the Doctor thinks it's the Commander because he's met him before. However, it wasn't him, and so the mystery on who sent the Mayday continues. And later on, one of these creatures with a translator, who didn't seemingly need his translator, gets murdered as he drinks something with cyanide. And when he collapses, the Doctor takes off his mask, only to reveal it was the guy that the old person recognised, and the Doctor recognises him. It was a secret agent spy, I can't remember, and he was he was basically undercover, and when this old man recognised him, he basically was panicking that somebody had followed him. So the shoes and the apparent dead body turned out to be a way to put the focus on something else, whilst he dresses up like a different character and continues his investigation, only to be caught and then abruptly murdered. And the Doctor tries to find out which one killer killed these people, and the story does start off pretty good in terms of building the plot up. However, when we get to the Vervoids themselves, these creatures where I believe they came out of these pods which the scientists were working out, and they basically go around murdering innocent people and can't remember if they turn other people into Vervoids. They do sting people and instantly kill them, but I can't remember if they can turn people into Vervoids. My memory eludes me. We do see one character actually like a half Vervoid. It's like half of her face is covered in like this weird, disgusting thing. Oh, there's a Vervoid on the cover of that. And these Vervoids look absolutely horrible. I don't want to take anything away from Chris Clout. I'm pretty sure he's done some great work. He's mainly known for his producer work, where he produced the series The Bill, a famous British television program about the police. In fact, I believe that's where we get the term The Bill. But anyway, and this would be his first Doctor Who directing duties, and it does kind of show that it is his first. Some scenes where it's supposed to be tragic or dramatic, I think, were lit a bit too brightly, and sometimes we do have some really good atmospheric moments, but majority of the story feels kind of bland and lackluster in terms of its directing and style, and it feels like it's trying to imitate the Agatha Christie style of storytelling, but doesn't understand what makes those particular ventures so good. And I think it's a cross between Jane and Pip Baker and the directing by Chris Clout, as something just doesn't seem to work out, and the pacing is all over the place. The majority of the story is just our characters wandering around waiting for new plots to arrive, and then we get some sudden moments of characters getting into the action, especially the Doctor, which does actually bring a point of one of my favourite scenes in the story, in which the Doctor's wondering why one of his characters is in a isolation room with a mask, and Mel points out, now you've got two problems. Apart from that guard, you also need a mask. And the Doctor just turns around and just smashes the fire alarm and tells the guard, quickly, there's people in danger, go, 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 and takes the masks off on the side of the wall and runs into the isolation room, where he finds the half Vervoid. And as soon as the Vervoids come into the plot as well, the mystery of the plot really becomes less and less interesting. Mainly because we have so many characters that were not either murderers themselves or were very suspicious. And yes, that is great storytelling if you can do it properly. However, with the stuff with the Vervoids as well, we constantly as an audience viewer are like, okay, the plot is over. It was the Vervoids, it was this person, okay, so now it's time to wrap up. No, wait, this character is also the villain, but I thought it was the Vervoids. I think we should be wrapping up now, but you're doing all of this in the last episode, in the last, I think it was all in the 4th episode. And don't get me wrong, every good mystery plot has a bunch of characters with their own motives, and it's up to our main characters to figure out who's the main murderer and stuff. But when you have so many people who turn out to be guilty, and they're all discovered really right at the very end of the plot, then the audience does kind of mellow out in its interest, as we're constantly okay, so we're adding another plot of these saboteurs who want to steal the ship because they want the metal that we only now discover. Okay, so now we get this this scientist who's going mad, who is believed to be the murderer for the majority of this, and he's taken the ship to destroy into a black hole, to destroy everything, because he's afraid that the Vervoids will kill everybody on Earth. Okay, it's the scientist who lived with ambition. Okay, it's actually her apprentice who was like the main threat, who wants to use the Vervoids as slave labour. And yeah, there's just so much reveal. There's just so much reveal in part 4 that the audience just kind of tunes out and goes, well, in that case, why couldn't everybody apart from the Doctor and Mel be guilty? I mean, it's more surprising on who's not involved in any shenanigans rather than who is. And that's a terrible way to set up your plot. And maybe I'm making it sound a lot more fun than it actually is. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot to like about Terror of the Vervoids. The Agatha Christie's kind of storytelling, the Sixth Doctor being his most liked, and Mel, despite me really not liking the character, is very proactive. She likes to get into the plot, even though she has her main character, shall we say, is just a one-note gag of her really liking exercise and feeling a lot like a really cheesy gym instructor. That's the best way to describe Mel in this story anyway. She's just basically a gym instructor travelling in the TARDIS, which actually sounds really cool now that I say it out loud. And so the Doctor is forced to use this particular metal to speed up the Vervoids process so that their biological system is going through all the seasons quickly, and so it goes quickly to autumn and they die and turn into brown leaves. In a really cool effect, actually, where you see the Vervoids die, and they stand up and they're all like these lush colours of greens and yellows and pinks, and when they collapse onto the floor, the colours actually disintegrate and they all turn like a brownish colour, which I think was a really cool effect. That's a really cool effect. I will admit that was really well handled. And so the Doctor killed all of the Vervoids. And back at the trial, the Doctor feels a bit somber as he admits that he had to kill the Vervoids because there was no other choice. Otherwise, all the universe, all of humanity would be put at risk. However, this isn't justified in the Valeyard's mind. He decides, makes a case that this trial should no longer be about the meddling of the Doctor in history and his condenser into time and space. This should now be a trial on genocide, on whether the Doctor is justified in killing an entire race. And that's Terror of the Vervoids. Overall, it's not a particular great story. I think the directing and writing are very weak. The story to be an introduction to Mel, though there's a lot of interesting ideas with her. She's a more proactive companion. We get to be introduced to her halfway into their adventures. It's not like we get her introduction into the TARDIS and whatnot. But she suffers because she's mainly a one-note character, and Bonnie Lanford, I think, might be playing her a bit too upbeat, and it kind of feels like she's playing it for the kids, if that makes any sense. It feels a lot pantomime, and that might be because of bad directing and just a bad choice of a character for her style of acting, but nothing. It didn't really work. But there is some stuff to like. The Sixth Doctor this is probably the one story in which, in terms of the main story, the Doctor is much more a traditional Doctor than we've ever met of the Colin Baker incarnation. And when we get to the trial segments, there is an interesting debate on the Doctor using evidence which he kind of now knows is faulty and has to use this to defend himself. And also as well, it's him trying to prove that he could be a better man, which will play a much bigger part in the next story. So there you go, that's Terror of the Vervoids. So join me next time where we conclude the Trial of the Time Lord storyline as the Doctor goes face to face with the Valeyard and we find out who he really is. So join me next time for The Ultimate Foe. And I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-da!